to, again, just take a moment of silence to think on the victims of Sutherland Springs, Texas. If you would please join me. Thank you. Okay, please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next on the agenda is a brief summary of current events by the mayor, city council, and/or city manager. The public body does not propose, discuss, deliberate, or take legal action on any matter brought up during the summary unless the specific matter is properly noticed for legal action. Is there anyone from the council who has something to report? Councilmember Pfeiffer?
I was at Cottonwood Elementary School last night where the 5th graders did a wonderful, very touching tribute to the veterans. And I just wanted to let everyone know what a great job they did. Beautiful music. The kids were fantastic.
I attended the Girona, or a homeless coalition meeting at Girona's for the mayor when he wasn't able to be there. I still think he would do a screaming job with this group. They're amazing. They have a lot of fire, a lot of passion, and I hope they really can get it off the ground and get some good done out there. Was one other thing that I attended. I attended American Legion dinner with ham hocks and beans, and it was marvelous. It's old school food, and there were so many people there honoring our vets. It was wonderful because all this funds goes to the American Legion for the supporting the vets and getting a new parking lot and things like that. It was marvelous. And I have to announce for my hunter fisherman friends that I did get my deer.
Yay!
The last day of my hunt, last minute. And I do have a real quick statement to make, Mayor, if you and council members would just humor me just for a second. And I did talk to the attorney and asked if this was appropriate, and he did say, our city attorney did say yes. So it's going to be appropriate, don't worry. As many of you are aware, both here and at home, our TV viewers, since the last election, we have been inundated with fake news. It's kind of become the norm. Us sitting here up at this dais are not immune from this. There's quite a lot of it out there right now. Some of it affecting us personally, and most of the time we can flush it off. But when you start getting contacted by your friends asking you about this fake news, I think it's time for us to step up and address it and say, hey, this is what's going on, why this is happening. You'd think a small community like this would be immune to it, but it's just a microcosm. It happens here like it happens everywhere else. I'm just going to touch on 2 most recent accusations, or whatever you want to call them, postings that affect me directly, and at one time would have sent my blood pressure through the roof. Not only am I on medication now for that, but it's got to the point where it is laughable. It is so ridiculous, some of the postings. But people are still coming to me, so I have to address them. Bless their heart, the postings have gone from questionable to absurd. And I found that to combat it, I just need to confront it head on. First one is I retired, most of you know I retired from the city of Cottonwood in 2015 as the assistant to the city manager. I'm listed on various sites as a secretary. Even our mayor, who does construction, historic preservation, and buildings, he's listed as a handyman. So that's just kind of where the news is tilted. When I retired, I thought I was done, but then they needed a couple of council members to be appointed, and I thought, really? You're setting me up for this? And so I stepped up and did the appointment and got appointed, and now I'm being accused of double dipping because I get retirement and I also get this huge stipend. People don't understand retirement I put into just like people put into their Social Security. I'm not getting anything extra. I put into it. They hopefully made it bigger with their investments, and I'm getting it back. There's no double dipping. the huge amount of money that we happen to get, most of the council members sitting up here, and the mayor gets a tiny bit larger, is $500 a month. Now, for those of you that know, between the mayor and I think we are the most active people on the council. We're lucky if that breaks down to $5 an hour. I mean, lucky if that breaks down to $5 an hour. We're making minimum wage on this. So anybody wants to step up and take on this job for less than minimum wage, come on up. So I need to say, people, I'm not double dipping. I came by this honestly. This is what's going on. The other one, I'll just touch on, like these are silly, but when I'm being approached by the public, I have to make it public. Another one is that I'm on the water rate committee. I have the audacity when our deputy city manager, then finance director, stepped up to me and said, hey, would you mind sitting on this committee? I said yes. Well, now I'm the one that's out there going to increase everybody's water bills, me personally. I have that much power now, just want you to know, which is ridiculous. I'm there to help make sure when that increase comes, it is the least painful possible. I'm there to make sure that it's necessary. I'm there to look at the old records, the new records. So I just want you to know that I really don't have the kind of authority that I'm being given. It's kind of funny. I would love to have that kind of authority. I'd be a wealthy girl, but I'm not. So this is going to happen more and more often. I have no desire to run for election, which is coming up, so I'm not using this as an electoral post, podium, whatever you want to call it. I just am not going to put up with the fake news anymore, as absurd as it is. And I think you're going to see a couple other council members will start stepping up and saying, this is what it is. So I just had to put that out there, and I want the public to know, if you see something that's so absurd, start looking into it. Ask us. We really won't brainwash you. We'll give you the truth. We'll show you the paperwork. People out there care. I've been a City of Cottonwood resident for 35 years. I moved from a big city to a small city to raise my 6 kids. Raised them all. They're out and about being productive members of society. And the only thing I want to do is make the city better, as does every single member up here, sacrificing their time. So I just had to put my 5 cents out there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a couple of things. Thank you, Kyla. Obviously, I've been volunteering at the American Legion. Those ham hocks and beans that Kyla came and enjoyed were cooked by my husband, and so I have been at the American Legion probably more than I've been home this last week or so. One other thing we did is we were approached by City Council several months ago to make a donation to the American Legion Riders for the Veterans Barbecue at the Veterans Hospital at Prescott, VA. My husband and I were able to ride along with the American Legion Riders to Prescott, sit with veterans, talk to them, have lunch with them, and I was just so moved by this event. I was put in charge of the wheelchair veterans, so I went and got their lunch because they couldn't do it, and then sat and they ate. I talked, I listened, but a lot of them talked about how nobody comes to see them. You know, they have no family or friends, or their family and friends don't come and see them. And so I was very moved by this. I encourage anybody who has time to go to the Prescott VA or go to your American Legion or go to your VFW, because we have a lot of veterans here in this community and at Prescott Hospital. We have one of our own from Cottonwood at Prescott VA Hospital right now, and I was able to visit with him as well. But it was a beautiful day, and of course a beautiful ride going over Mingus Mountain. So I know there's a lot going on this weekend, this Saturday the 11th, but we do have the Moose Lodge is doing the annual toy run to get toys for our kids here in the Verde Valley, and all proceeds from that toy run, all money collected for the toy run, goes to the Cottonwood Teen Center. So a really good program. If you don't ride, you don't have to. You can come out in a car. You can ride a bicycle. You can, I guess you could walk, but we're going to Sedona, so and then back to the Moose Lodge, so probably not such a good idea. But you know, we're taking toys at Walmart Saturday morning, and of course money, and we'd love to see people out there supporting our kids. And then the Verde Valley Military Service Park, Doug, I don't know if you were going to touch on this, but since Saturday is also Veterans Day, they're having their retirement of the flags. starts at 12:20 approximately. The flags will be coming down, and at 1 o'clock, the annual replacement of the American flag will go up. And that's also a wonderful ceremony that I am going to somehow squeeze into my very busy Saturday. But and then, of course, walking on Main, which I'm sure somebody will touch on. So lots going on this weekend.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other council members? No. Okay, I'll just report briefly that we had a really wonderful home tour this last weekend on Saturday, and it was very well. It was the best attended yet, and we had a ton of volunteers, over 30 volunteers. A ton of research that we did on the homes. Everybody had a really, really great time. So we have Commissioner Bigelow in the room and Commissioner Matthews as well. They were instrumental in making this event a great success, and I'll report to council later on all the numbers and how well we did and give you the survey that we collected. But just wanted to say thanks to Cottonwood and thanks to all the volunteers that came together to make it great. All right, if there's nothing else, City Manager, have you got stuff to report?
A couple things. As Councilmember Althouse mentioned, it is Walking on Main this weekend. Wine, crafts, art, and blues. So come on down for that. On November 18th is our annual Fall Classic Disc Golf Tournament. However, it's already sold out, and the recipients of that event will be the Veterans Military Park. So that'll be a great time for all. The city recently put in for a kiosk for making a request to One for the Verde for a kiosk down at the Riverfront Park that'll help interpret some of the plants and animals down that way. So we'll wait to see what happens with that. And then they're starting the next phase of the airport apron this next week. So everything's moving along. That's it,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we have two presentations tonight. First up is Nicole BRANTON, District Ranger for the Red Rock Ranger District, Coconino National Forest. And she'll make a presentation regarding the new forest plan. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I am embarrassed to say this is my first time at the Cottonwood City Council, so I owe you guys more visits. So I'll just start off by inviting you, if you hear any news, fake or otherwise, that you'd like to investigate. I'm always at your disposal. You can reach me at my office, and I'm happy to come to the City Council anytime you have questions about smoke, fires, recreation, lands issues, any of that. So please invite me again. Tonight I'm here to just give a very brief overview of our new forest plan. So our forest plan is kind of like a city zoning document. It's a very high-level strategic view of kind of what our intentions are around the whole footprint of the national forest. So it's very high-level. If you were to print it out, and I don't recommend doing that, even though I'm in the forest products business, I guess, it's about that tall. So there's a lot of detail in there, so I will apologize up front if you have very detailed questions. I probably won't know the answer to them, but I know some people who do, and I will research them and get back with you or with the city staff to answer any specific questions you have. So I don't know if it's, I can just move on. And I provided this to you guys if you want to look at the presentation in more detail. So the Coconino National Forest is huge. It's about 2 million acres. It's divided, it's 1.8 million acres. It's divided up into 3 ranger districts, the best of which, of course, is the Red Rock Ranger District here in the Verde Valley. But it's very diverse forest because it's so big, and it contacts many communities, Flagstaff, Sedona, here in the Verde Valley, a number of communities, of course Cottonwood being one of them, and has a broad range of ecosystems. And we also co-manage the only 2 wild and scenic rivers in Arizona, and of course you all know one of those is the Verde River here, and the other is Fossil Creek. Thanks. So we've been working on this forest plan revision for about 10 years. Our old forest plan, or our current forest plan today, is from 1987. So as you can imagine, a lot of need for change. The communities that we serve have changed a lot over those years. People's recreation demands is one of those that touches my work very often. Our science about landscape management has changed a lot over those years. So you'll see, if you do read through the forest plan, A lot of the changes won't seem especially shocking to you. A lot of them are just codifying things that have been our practices for many of those years, even though they aren't in the original forest plan. And there's some famous amendments to the forest plan that have happened over those 30 years, like the Amendment 12 area around Sedona. All of those amendments have been incorporated into the new forest plan. They're just not called amendments anymore. So in general, the plan focuses on sustaining healthy conditions of ecological resources. It gives us more flexibility to manage those diverse ecosystems that are very different, say from my district to the top of the San Francisco Peaks. It eliminates some standards and guidelines to give us greater flexibility and gives us intent behind those, so that even where we've had trouble following standards and guidelines in the past, we're able to carry out the intent of those under the new plan. And the aim is just to show us how to move the ecosystems toward desired conditions at the landscape scale. So it's strategic, it doesn't replicate law, regulation, or policy, and it doesn't tell us how to do our day-to-day work. It gives us the big picture of how to move things to desired conditions. So there's a few things that it focuses on. One is healthy watersheds. The forest has 126 code watersheds, and over 80% are considered at risk or impaired. It also focuses on fire management, and one of the changes that you'll see in this forest plan is it allows us to manage natural ignitions, that's lightning, for multiple resource objectives, including in the wilderness. One of the carryovers from that really out-of-date 30-year-old plan is that it didn't allow us to manage fires in wilderness. It incorporates smoke management actions that we've developed since the original plan. For example, coordinating with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality to ensure that prescribed burns comply with state and federal regulations, and promoting public awareness about potential smoke from fire activities. I know that's near and dear to a lot of people here in the Verde Valley, as we've been completing a lot of prescribed burns over the last month. And that's a good example of one of those things that isn't really new. We've been doing that, but it's being incorporated into the plan now. It focuses on species viability. And on recreation and scenery, it focuses on a wider range of recreation opportunities. So we use what's called the recreation opportunity spectrum, which identifies types of activities, types of recreation that people want in different areas, and moves us to using a more modern method of evaluating scenery impacts, which is the Scenic Integrity Objectives, or SIOs. We are the government, so we like our acronyms. It also adds recommends three wilderness areas. Congress adds wilderness, we just recommend it. That's the Avino, Davies, and Strawberry Crater. The only one of those that's down here in the Verde Valley is the Davies Wilderness, that's around Fossil Creek. It adds special interest areas, and for us, that really is combining the Cottonwood, botanical, and geologic areas into one, and focuses on open space, especially around Flagstaff and the Walnut Canyon area. So to give you an idea of the kind of so what for this, we're pretty proud of the impact that we have on our communities around the National Forest, really proud to serve the variety of communities that we have here. So alternative B, let's see if I can make this do the pointer. Whoop, nope, sure can't. Alternative B, there we go, is the revised plan, and it generates $212 million of income and creates 5,538 jobs. We're pretty proud of that. That doesn't include people like me that wear a Forest Service uniform to work. Those are those jobs in of ranchers, people who work in recreation, all of those jobs that are in your community. Not that we don't live in your community as well, but we're pretty proud of that. So we're at the end of this 10-year process of developing this plan. There have been multiple public comment periods. We've published the notice of availability. We're working on what's called the record of decision to be signed by the regional forester this winter. So I could talk a lot more about this, but I didn't want to take up too much time just going through slides, because I wanted to be able to answer your questions, or at least if they're very detailed, capture them for somebody who knows more than me to answer and to report back to you. So So are there any questions about the forest plan?
Any questions from council? Can you just go into a little bit more detail on the
Sure.
prescribed burns? Because I know that is a hot button item, and
Yes.
is there any relief in sight, or is there any other way to manage those forests? Removing some of that timber that
Right.
we're burning otherwise.
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that. This is a question people ask a lot. So we know that we have greatly overgrown forests, especially in Ponderosa. We spent about 100 years in the Forest Service. You guys may be familiar with the bear that taught us all as kids that fire was bad. We spent about 100 years in the Forest Service putting out fires as soon as they started. And what we found is, all of us here, we're the night shift that has to deal with the fuels that's left behind by those policies. So we have greatly overgrown forests. It's bad for our watersheds. And of course, when we do have those ignitions that are near our homes, it can be very bad for our communities. And you all probably remember the slide fire just a few years ago when I first started here, my first summer here. So we have to address that overgrowth and protect our watersheds so we have clean drinking water. And so when we do have those ignitions close to communities, we're able to address those in a way that protect properties and don't put our firefighters at any more risk than they have to be. So there's a couple options for that. We can burn that. We can remove it mechanically, whether that's by hand with chainsaws or that's with equipment. So they really have two different ecosystem effects, though. If we were to entirely use mechanical means to harvest that material, we wouldn't get the same ecological effects. Our forests are evolved with fire. Fire's part of their natural life cycle. So we do have to have some amount of fire. We do mechanical thinning and hand thinning in places where we really can't safely have fire, but it's a much better outcome to burn those. The smoke that you guys may have been breathing over the last couple of weeks is from those pockets of ponderosa pine that are Mexican spotted owl habitat. That hasn't been burned for many years. We were able to work with the Fish and Wildlife Service to find ways to burn those outside of the breeding season, but before it gets too humid to have the positive effects we have to have. So the reason you saw a lot of smoke from that, though, is because we haven't burned in those areas for many years, and there's a lot of heavy fuels in there. So we will get comments a lot where people will say, enough, it's been burning for 3 days, or it's been burning for 5 days, turn it off. It's really hard to turn those off because that fire just burns in those heavy fuels, and it's got to consume all the heavy fuels. So we're always looking for ways to be more sensitive, though, to those communities, and especially people who have health problems, that they really are very sensitive to that smoke. So we're always trying to improve on that. And if you all have suggestions for how we could do that better, how we can communicate with your community members better, or if there's times that you think we need to be especially sensitive about, even if the burn isn't happening on my district, I'm happy to be the voice for that, as we make decisions, whether we're burning on the Coconino National Forest, the Tonto National Forest, the Kaibab National Forest, or the Prescott National Forest. That smoke tends to end up in the Verde Valley. So I'm happy to help communicate that. If you submit a comment on the Coconino National Forest website, every member of the forest leadership team, so that's myself, the other 2 district rangers on the forest supervisor and deputy forest supervisor, we all get those so that we're looking cumulatively at what the impacts are. So we do hear you if you're sending in comments.
All right. If I get another complaint, I'll just tell them to call Nicole Branton.
Absolutely.
Problem solved, right? Thanks.
That's my job.
Any other questions? No, thanks for being here.
Okay,
Appreciate
yeah,
it.
absolutely. And please reach out if you have any concerns or questions about the forest plan as it moves along. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next presentation is an update from the Planning and Zoning Commission. We have Chairman Kyler here with us tonight. Thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I do appreciate you being here. This is part of what came out of our strategic planning session last year, was to try to find ways to increase communication between our commissions and the council. So this is one step in that direction. So we do appreciate you being here tonight.
I didn't quite get all the question. I'm a little hard of hearing.
It's okay.
Our commission is currently staffed with 7 people. The commissioners, it's a full set. Everybody seems to be available for the long haul. We're not expecting any empty chairs for any reason, but that's always a possibility. And the one thing that we really, really like is the fact that the staff provides excellent information and presentations when we have items on our agenda that need approval or to be forwarded on to council. Most of what we do is completed the night of the meeting. Occasionally we do have to table items and bring them back, but that's a rarity. Most of the time we get it done, always based on the fact that great presentations. The only thing that we're working on at this time is a revision of the sign code. And we're having, we'd like to bring it down. The current sign code on state highways allows for a 20-foot sign. Current sign code on the arterials such as Main Street allows for a 15-foot sign. We have been very successful over the last couple of years convincing businesses to put monument signs. And I think our biggest coup was a couple years ago when Walmart built their big store. They built a monument sign as we requested, and they changed the colors as best they could to fit what we wanted. So what we're proposing is to reduce the size of all signs on every street to 10 feet. This is all preliminary now. This was the decision that was made at the last meeting. We had a little problem with Circle K with their new building. They wanted to put up 15-foot signs. We approved, in the design review process, we approved everything except the signs. And we asked them if they would reconsider bringing the size of the signs down, that we like monument signs. We haven't heard back from them. As far as I know right now, nobody has heard back from them. I don't know what they're doing over there. If you haven't noticed, there's for sale signs on that property. So when you council members are driving about town or walking, take a look and see how many businesses have monument signs. Galpin RV, they changed theirs for us. I could go on and mention all kinds of places. Maverick balked a little bit. They wanted a 20-foot sign. They brought it down to 15. That's all right. It looks pretty good, but it's about 3 feet in the hole, so that brings it even down a little further. So we're working on this. We need input from the public, from businesses. The problem we have is nobody comes to our meetings. The agenda's out there. It's on the agenda. And then when things don't go quite the way they want, they come in here and they storm all over you folks. So we just need to try to figure out a way to get more input from the community while we're having our meetings, so it doesn't get hassle time over here when you come in. So I would invite you, as I said, to check around, look at all the monument signs we have. I'm very proud we were able to do this. So far, everybody has been on board with us. The revision to the sign code, and there may be some other changes that we haven't got to yet that have to be in there. And we're looking at anywhere from maybe 60 to 90 days from now before it may be ready to come to council for disposition. So other than that, we're in good shape over there. Got a good staff, got a good group of people on the council, on the commission, and you couldn't ask for a better bunch of people to work with or for. So
Great.
that's really all we're up to these days. So if there's any questions, I'd try to answer them for you. All I ask you to do is speak up, please.
Any questions for Chairman Kyler?
No.
Well, I had the great honor of serving with Chairman Kyler when I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission. That was about 12 years ago. Long time ago now, but you run a tight ship over there. We sure appreciate it.
Well, I try my best, Mr. Mayor, and I've been there 15 years now, so it's a pleasure to serve the city of Cottonwood.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is call to the public. This portion of the agenda is set aside for the public to address the council regarding an item that is not listed on the agenda for discussion. The council cannot engage in discussion regarding any item that is not officially listed on the agenda for discussion and/or action. Anybody in the audience tonight that would like to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda? Okay, we'll close the floor then and move on to approval of minutes, regular meetings of September 5, 2017 and October 17, 2017, and the work session of September 12, 2017. There's no corrections. I'll go ahead and move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have Mayor made the motion and Councilmember Allen seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. We move on then to unfinished business, agreement with Yavapai Broadcasting for financial support from the city for the operation of the local government access channels 2 and 56.
Mr. Mayor, council members, this is an item that was brought to you, I think in September now, maybe it was October. But again, the council directed staff to go back and see if we could find some partners. To date, we have found 2 partners, which is the Chamber of Commerce has committed $3,000 to help, as well as the Cottonwood Economic Development Council also committed $3,000. We're still waiting to hear from Yavapai College. Our hope is that they'll come forward with at least a couple $1,000 to help out with this as well, since they use the program, they use the channel for broadcasting their board meetings, although they do pay Yavapai Broadcasting for the filming and the time that it takes for Yavapai Broadcasting to do that. So with that, I think the other question that came up was a question about where does this money come from? And so in your packet, there was also a list of salary savings, which not a complete list, but certainly a list that shows that there is available money to offset the cost of this. And with that, I would turn it back to the council, and obviously Mr. Bessler's here tonight to answer any questions related to Yavapai Broadcasting.
Okay, does council have any questions for staff at this time? I know we went over this in a lot of detail at the last time we discussed it.
I have one follow-up
Sure.
question. Mr. Bartosh, I was curious why this didn't come through the budget process.
It was in discussions late into the budget process, and we didn't really come up with, kind of a plan until after the budget process was already complete. So it was about August when we actually came up with a plan.
So was it brought to the city late by Yavapai Broadcasting? Because then I have a question for Yavapai Broadcasting as to, I'll just ask my question. The budget process is very open. You've been filming it for years now, so you know the city's budget process. Why did you not bring this issue forward earlier so it could have been included as part of the budget process?
Primarily, it came down to kind of our internal decision-making processes as to how long we could continue to proceed, and basically it came down to when we presented the concept is when our owner, Grant, said that we just can't continue to bleed any longer. So I think it was just a matter of timing. This wasn't a forethought on our part as to becoming part of the budget. It became a need when it became a need in our own internal conversations.
I guess I think I've said this up here a few times, several times now in the last couple of council meetings. I feel that we have a process for the budget and we should follow it. And Yavapai's known that they were losing money. Yavapai Broadcasting's known they were losing money. I just feel like it really should have been part of the budget process and go through the budget. That's my opinion.
Okay. Any other council members? No. Okay. Well, and I don't disagree with you. I think it's, it's tough when these things crop up throughout the year, but I know it's not uncommon for these sort of things to come before council throughout the year. It's hard to anticipate everything. Hopefully if we continue this relationship, there'll just be better communication so these things don't become surprises. But I'm pleased that we've had some partners come on board. And I think, in terms of what they offer to the council and to the community is of great value. So I certainly hope that we can continue the relationship.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yeah.
Just as the council considers and then decides and gives direction to staff on this, please consider that in the attachment, which is just a draft, it's just a working draft that we'll finalize, but you'd be giving direction. You could be taking legal action tonight to give us direction, and then it wouldn't come back to you. And that draft agreement presumes that the funding is, to Councilwoman Althouse's point, retroactive to July 1st. So please consider whether that is your decision to fund at the amount per year retro to July 1.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is that clear to council?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any further discussion? Members of the public care to address council? No. Okay. Then I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move to provide Yavapai Broadcasting with $42,000 per year to support the operation of the city's government access channel, subject to development and approval of a final form of agreement by the city manager and city attorney.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Allen and a second by Councilmember Pfeiffer. Let's have the deputy clerk take a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Althouse?
No.
Councilmember Norman?
Yes.
Councilmember Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Henry?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Howard?
Yes.
And Mayor Linsky?
Yes, thank you. Motion's approved. Okay, next up is, thank you, Mr. Bessler. Next up is consent agenda. We have a lot. We have 12 items on the consent agenda. So I'll go down the list here. Acquisition, well, let me just tell you, these following items are considered routine and non-controversial by the council, and they'll be approved by one motion. So there'll be no separate discussion on these items, unless a member of the public requests or a council member requests. So I'll list them then in the order they appear. Acquisition of controlled liquor license application submitted by Michael J. Basha, agent for Food City number 37. Special event liquor license application submitted by Beth T. Kennedy, applicant for the Verde Valley Fair Association, for an event scheduled for December 15 and 16, 2017 at the Verde Valley Fairgrounds located at 1110 East Cherry Street. Application for extension of premises patio permit submitted by Brian J. Webb, licensee for the State Bar located at 1048 North Main Street for the Walking on Main event scheduled for November 9 through 13, 2017. Acceptance of an Arizona Department of Homeland Security grant in the amount of $4,400 on behalf of the Cottonwood Fire and Medical Department for the purchase of specialized protective gear. Award of bid and contract for pavement marking services to Franklin Striping, Inc. Renewal of contract with W.W. Williams for a one-year period retroactive to May 5th, 2017 for city generator maintenance and repair services. Number 7, request for one-time waiver from the city's procurement policy for the purchase of a used dump truck for the city's utility department in an amount not to exceed $65,000. Item 8, purchase and acceptance of water line easement on North Willard Street, APN 406-23-040H. Number 9, acceptance of a water line maintenance and access easement from Mongini House LLC, the Joseph J. Mongini Revocable Trust, and GM Fratelli LLC. Number 10, acceptance of a public utility easement from the Verde Valley Fair Association for access to a reclaimed water injection well. Bless you. Item 11, dedication and acceptance of a perpetual easement for the maintenance of a public sidewalk and public drainage way over city-owned parcel APN 406-42-170K. And last but not least, item 12, proposed reimbursement processing agreement with Healthy Contributions LLC for the Optum Fitness Passport Program at the Cottonwood Recreation Center. Any members of the public wish to pull an item? Any council members wish to pull an item?
Yes, please. Can we pull item number 3 and 10, please?
3 and 10. Okay, let's go ahead and pull item 3 now for discussion, and we'll take the rest of the consent after this.
I just had a quick question on the dates. The temporary permit is asking for an extension of premises from November 9th through the 13th. And I was just wondering what was happening on the 9th through the 13th and if liquor would be served all of those dates on the extended patio, et cetera.
Okay.
Because that's this Thursday through Monday.
That's handled through the clerk's office, is that correct?
Yes, that's what they filled out on their form. As far as I know, that would allow them to serve liquor on those days.
And the festival is one day. It's this Saturday from 11 to 5.
Yep.
So do you have any additional information apart from what we were provided as to what the plan is to serve on the 9th through the 13th?
I don't.
It is a little misleading that it's for the Walking on Main event, but it's for, additional days. And I don't know if the applicant is here tonight. I don't believe he is. Okay.
I mean, I don't have a problem with the extension for the event and the festival, but this seems as though it's just a separate independent item and not for Walking on Main.
Right.
And I don't know what their plan as far as serving on each of these days.
Sure. Yeah, and I wish I knew more information, and I wish the applicant were here, but I don't know how we can get more information. This is something we give a recommendation to the State Liquor Board, right?
Correct.
It's not up to the council to approve or deny this, just to recommend approval or denial. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any way we can modify that?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
And it is, this is a license holder, Mr. Mayor. They're asking for, just to clarify, to be able to serve in a part of their property that they don't ordinarily and can't ordinarily serve.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
My only concern with the diagram is it's really not clear. It doesn't look as though that extra space is, adequately fenced or that there's security we don't have any information from the diagram really either.
Yes,
So I'd be more comfortable. I understand with the event there are a lot of different license holders that participate in the event as well.
It's certainly the council's prerogative to provide no recommendation, just to communicate back to the department that there was some confusion about the request, and staff can certainly do that if that's the council's decision.
And that wouldn't be my preference. I'd rather limit it to the actual event if that's the intent of the request, which is what the application states. Mm-hmm. But you're saying we have to either recommend?
No, I think the statute contemplates a recommendation of approval or denial, but I think if this council were to take legal action that recommends approval limited to certain dates, I can't tell you what the department will do about that, but we can certainly communicate that to the department.
So what you're saying is in our motion we could recommend that they limit it to just the one date, November 11, I believe.
Sure.
Okay.
That would be my preference because it's what we've done every other time as long as I've been on council when we've had requests for extension of premises for a festival or an event. It's usually limited to the event itself, and here it sounds as though we're expanding that, and then are we going to then be having to do that every other time? We don't have additional information again about security, fencing, the control and flow of the alcohol on the premises that Thursday through Monday, et cetera.
Okay.
That's a very good point, Councilmember Henry.
Would you care to make a motion?
Well, sure, I'll make a motion, but I don't know if anyone else wants to discuss that point or disagrees, and if anyone's ready for a motion.
I think I'm fine with it the way it is. I'm sure that they either have something planned to extend some sort of event, or they are just going to do it during Walking on Main, but I'm personally fine with it the way it is.
My concern is if we don't have any information about what their plan is, and so what that means is that our citizens, if there are issues or incidents, it's our police who are going to be responding and basically providing the security for this, premises extension, and that's the taxpayers who are basically paying for that instead of them saying, this is our plan, this is how we plan to address this additional premises, additional people, additional occupancy, et cetera.
I don't think that the liquor board would approve it without a proper security. I mean,
Well, that would be up to the liquor board.
it would be up to the liquor board, and the liquor board is going to make sure that they have the proper security and not, you can't just have people walking around. You have to have security. That's part of the liquor board's responsibility. But I think it would have been fair to let the applicant, Brian Webb, know that there was going to be questions so he could have been here. I don't think it's fair to not have let him know that you had questions.
And I disagree. I think that anytime somebody has submitted an item for council and it's going before council, they should be present and prepared to support their application. And that's just a personal opinion.
I believe he was made aware, I'm sure he was, that this would be on the agenda tonight. And I do wish that we had.
On the consent agenda.
Mm-hmm. And I do wish that the applicant were here to answer these questions. I agree with Althouse. I'm not so concerned about it, but I would like to know what the plan is. And maybe they have an event leading up to the event and following the event where they're going to try to promote, and they want to do that through their sales. I don't know. I'm guessing.
I think it's really hard when somebody does that. Perhaps it's something we can direct the clerk's office to kind of make us more aware of, or because there's nowhere on this form to tell us what's going on. It's Veterans Day weekend. Maybe they're doing something for Veterans Day and they're including it. We can just make assumptions, but there's really nothing on this form besides saying Walking on Main Festival to give us a detail. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of hamstrung a little bit with that.
Okay.
But Walking on Main is one evening. It's pretty clear when Walking on Main is that if that was their intent.
Deputy Clerk?
And the application, just as a point of reference, does say that they will have new fencing and additional staff at all points and egress?
On number 11?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Well, would somebody care to make a motion on this?
I'm not on that page. Can we just say, I move to approve the extension of premises patio permit submitted by Brian J. Webb, licensee for the State Bar located at 1048 North Main Street for Walking on Main events scheduled from November 9th through the 13th, 2017.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Althouse made the motion. Councilmember Allen seconded it. Deputy Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Althouse?
Yes.
Councilmember Norman?
Yes.
Councilmember Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
It's approved. Okay, and the next item that was pulled in, and just to clarify, my no vote too is that it did say it was for the Walk on Main event, which is just one day, so a little more clarification on that would have been helpful. Next item to be pulled is item 10, acceptance of a public utility easement from the Verde Valley Fair Association for access to a reclaimed water injection well.
I have a conflict, so I'm going to declare the conflict, step down for the vote.
Thank you. Mr. Biggs, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Utility Department is requesting access easement from the Verde Valley Fair Association. This is across a parcel of fairground-owned property, basically extending south from the end of 11th Street, approximately 60 to 63 feet, to a parcel owned by the city of Cottonwood. The easement's approximately 20 feet wide, and it's for possible future use if the injection well that is now under construction comes to fruition. We would require this easement to run piping to the injection well. Any questions?
You say if the injection well comes to fruition.
The well is currently under construction,
okay.
So I'm not.
But you're optimistic, right?
I'm quite optimistic. Okay. Yes.
All right. All right. Any discussion from council? Questions for staff? No. Do I hear a motion? I'll go ahead and move to approve that we accept the public utilities easement as granted by the Verde Valley Fair Association.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion and Councilmember Althouse seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
No. Okay, motion's approved.
Yeah, sorry, I was just talking to myself. Hey, I have a possible conflict. I didn't realize item number 12 I thought Healthy Sneakers was still a Health Net program, but I just looked and it's a United Healthcare program. I work for United Healthcare. Should I just step down to be safe?
There's some authority that suggests the conflict of an employer or the interest of an employer is attributed to the employee.
Okay, so I would like to pull item number 12, and I'll step down due to a possible conflict.
Okay, very
I don't
good.
work for that part of the company. But
Thank you.
Good catch.
All right. Let us pull item 12 then. Proposed reimbursement processing agreement with Healthy Contributions LLC for the Optum Fitness Passport program at the Cottonwood Recreation Center. Who is covering this one? Mr. Bigelow, good evening.
Good evening. Ryan Bigelow, Recreation Services Supervisor. United Healthcare is now looking, instead of providing the Silver Sneakers program, they have created their own program called the Optum Passport. It's a reimbursement program. What we do at the rec center is we track visits, we give it to the insurance company, and then they reimburse us per visit at the recreation center.
Okay. Questions for staff from council? Discussion? Motion?
No, this looks like a great program, and I would move to approve the proposed reimbursement processing agreement with Healthy Contributions LLC for the Optum Fitness Passport program at the Cottonwood Recreation Center.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Henry made the motion. Councilmember Norman seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's approved. Thank you. All right. Now let's take the rest of the consent agenda. Moving at a snail's pace here, aren't we?
Probably need a list of who we all work for.
Move to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Henry and Norman, or Piper seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda is approved. Thank you. And we move on to new business. Are there any resolutions or anything in there? No? Okay. All right, new business is item 1, issuance of notice of intent to adopt a proposed use tax of up to 3% on certain tangible personal property, including vehicles and equipment used or stored in the city by individuals and businesses who have not already paid an equivalent sales tax or use tax to the city or another local taxing authority. Good evening, Mr. Rodriguez. How are you?
Hello, Mayor, Council. I'm Rudy Rodriguez. I'm the Deputy City Manager for the City of Cottonwood. Today we're coming to ask Council for approval to issue the notice of intent for a proposed use tax of up to 3% for certain tangible personal property. What this would basically entail would be for us to unselect model code 15, and would add sections Article 6 and Section 600 through 660 of the Model City Tax Code. The way we are actually asking for a couple of exemptions. If some of you are not aware of the Model City Tax Code, decades ago, they tried to set up a tax code for all cities to follow, and they have options that you can take, and options. Some add taxes, some do not allow taxes. In our case, we selected Model Code number 15, which did not implement use tax. Other surrounding communities, they did not take Model 15, and they have a use tax. So we're coming to council to get that removed and allow the use tax and add section Article 16. Article 6. We were asking for some exemptions on this particular use code, local option code AA, which does not allow use tax on the cost of employee meals. We think that's kind of frivolous. Option code HH, of course, which exempts local charities. And then, of course, option JJ, which of course exempts any tangible personal property that is managed by the city. If we tax ourselves, we get our 3% back. It just doesn't make sense. So those are the exceptions that we would like to go ahead and include, and we have included it in the notice of intent. Part of the notice of intent, there is, and you have it probably listed in your packet, requires us to have a report supporting the new rates and fees, and basically what the city's doing, trying to recoup lost revenue, $5,000. Again, this is an estimate. Other communities have collected in excess of $200,000. Others have collected obviously less. This is just a ballpark figure. It has a minimal effect on our citizens. Most of our citizens will not be paying any additional tax. This is not a tax on any local items. This is traditionally on vehicles, large equipment, or tangible personal property that is brought into the city of Cottonwood that where they have not paid any tax, or they have paid tax that is less than our 3%. It helps to level the playing field for some of our local businesses. It also helps reduce tax leakage to other communities, meaning that if other communities are advertising that they can sell you, let's take for an example, a vehicle for 1% sales tax, because that's what's allowed in their community, they would be buying a vehicle and retitling it in Cottonwood and having to pay the additional 2%. So it basically takes the less sales tax off the table for those big ticket items. Another thing is it encourages also businesses that come in. Also, we will be making sure that when they bring in equipment from outside of the city or outside of the state, which many do, that they also pay use tax to us. Now, the state of Arizona already collects a use tax. They're 5.6%. They do collect it on vehicles and they collect it on any type of tangible equipment. We will be basically tacking on to them the additional 3%. I do have with me today Don Zalahusky, who is our sales tax auditor. There were some questions about additional costs to the city. Our intent with this is that this will be just part of his normal routine auditing procedures, so we don't anticipate any additional costs. But a lot of the big ticket items, especially vehicles such when registered in Cottonwood, motor vehicle would go ahead and collect the tax. The other thing, a question that came up, and is that what if you buy a vehicle in Prescott, they do all your paperwork and they title your vehicle right there on the spot. Well, they will title it, they will send it to Cottonwood MVD, and the Department of Revenue will be sending a bill out for the difference in the sales tax. Excuse me, the difference in the use tax.
Can you provide just a little bit more clarification on that? So if you can get your vehicle, I've never bought a new vehicle, so I'm going to just confess that right now.
Long while.
But anyway, so they'll assess, they will not assess the tax at the point of sale. Well, they will, but it'll be for the city of Prescott in this example.
They will collect it. They will collect it for their community.
Okay.
And submit, when all the paperwork goes to MVD, then ADOR would collect the amount and send it over to us. However, if you buy a vehicle outside and move into Cottonwood and you want to title it here in Cottonwood, they will collect it at the MVD.
Right. But so it's possible if somebody gets a vehicle in Prescott, they'll get a separate bill then from the Department of Revenue after it's.
Yes.
No way to avoid that.
They're not a city. If they're going to title it in Cottonwood, unless they want to have some place to title it in Prescott.
Yeah, I see.
And again, this is all to try to stop leakage. You buy a Chevy truck here or a Chevy truck over there, and you pay less sales tax. Well, if you can get the same truck here, you can probably get the same deal here.
I'm just curious if there's not, is there no, how would they know otherwise? I mean, at the point of sale, is there no way for the dealership then to say, you know, if you're going to register this in Cottonwood, you're going to have to pay an additional 1% or whatever. I don't know what their use tax is in Prescott, but there's no educational campaign that can.
The only educational campaign we can do is here locally. That's it. We need to just educate our public that there is a use tax. If say if a big ticket item is bought somewhere else with less, it will probably have to pay the difference here. That's about the only thing we can do. The other cities cannot possibly collect for each and every city in the areas. You know, we have different rates just here in the Verde Valley. Can you imagine the other 90-some-odd cities? There's no way we would be able to track that.
It just seems like the dealerships themselves would let the consumer know, depending on where they live. But again, never bought a new car, so not real familiar with it.
It would be very difficult for them to be tracking everybody, so it's easier for them to submit the registration paperwork and let the ADOR go ahead and handle it, because they have the database.
Okay.
Again, I have our sales tax auditor here with us if you have any questions. And again, this is just the beginning of the process. One of the things we're doing is going through an actual notice of intent, which is a little bit different for this kind of for taxes. However, the notice of intent will allow us to have 2 public hearings, so we can go ahead as part of the process. So what we're trying to do is get the notice of intent out there, and we will be having public hearings before it's finally said and done.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Rodriguez?
I did. I just had one.
Sure.
I've had a lot of questions from people about what is the use tax going to apply to, and I've seen different phrases in the information provided to us: big ticket items, vehicles, heavy equipment. But a lot of members of the public have asked, you know, what exactly does that mean? Is it mostly what's heavy equipment? Does that include, or what is equipment? Does that include hospital equipment? Does that include heavy machinery? Do you have anything that I can, any guidance for the public on what the use tax will be applicable to?
We're looking at anything over $1,000.
So with
and heavy equipment, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. A lawnmower is obviously not heavy equipment, but we're talking, if someone's going to purchase a tractor, obviously that's heavy equipment. If they're going to purchase it at a different location or outside the state where there is no sales tax or there's no sales tax collected for Cottonwood, that may be a whole different story. They should be reporting the use tax. And just so you know, there's a good chance they're already reporting it to the state of Arizona. All there's going to be is an additional line that says, by the way, Cottonwood has a use tax, and now you have to pick it up. Most of the people who are buying equipment and heavy equipment and such probably already know about this Arizona use tax. They're just going to find, their accounts are going to just find an additional line on it. So it's not that confusing for the big ticket buyers. Now, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you go out and buy a smart TV for $1,500, that's obviously over $1,000. Mm-hmm. We're not going to be the TV police and go find you to go ahead and collect the 3%. That would be a waste of our services. Our concern is making sure that we collect, especially from those people that we do know and that probably should know that they need to collect, because they're probably already collecting at one point or other. If they're buying big, heavy equipment, they're probably paying a use tax to the state of Arizona already, so they already know they have to collect it. Same way with, anything, you buy a car, a lot of dealers may not know it, but that's our responsibility to get that information out there. If you're going to go collect somewhere else, there's probably a good chance you're going to get a call from the Department of Revenue. Not a call, but you will probably get a bill from the Department of Revenue for the additional percentage.
So some specific questions I had from businesses and members of the public: jewelry over $1,000, art over $1,000. Are those the types of items that we're going to either impose the use tax on or collect on?
You're supposed to self-report, okay? But I'm going to tell you, it's much like being able to write off your sales tax. You go out and you're supposed to report your sales tax on your income tax. Most people don't, okay? We're not going to go out there and go take your jewelry or watch off of your wrist because you didn't pay the sales tax. We're more concerned trying to collect as much of this tax as we possibly can. Last thing we want to do is interfere with people's lives, especially on personal property, like smaller stuff. I think if it's a $20,000, $30,000 item, we're probably going to find out about it somewhere or another. But traditionally, if you've got a $1,000 piece of jewelry, a new ring, that's the last thing we're going to be chasing down. We're looking at chasing, pennies. using dollars, it doesn't make sense to us. We're more concerned with those big ticket items such as heavy equipment, vehicles, boats, RVs that are coming into town, or people that are businesses that are pulling business from out of our community into other areas. When they title them in here, those are the big ticket items we're talking about.
And I'm almost to the end of these questions.
That's fine.
Another question was, are you able to provide any additional guidance or discussion about how that $75,000 was calculated? Is that just this first year, or is that every single year? How many cars does that represent for the people in our city, or items?
We just looked at the surrounding communities and population, just eyeballed and guessed it. I've implemented use taxes with other cities, and we were shocked by how much money that thing brought in. But they typically had manufacturing and some other types of businesses where they were consuming things in their and operating their business, and were paying the state use tax, but had not been paying the city use tax. So we generate money that way. There's things we just can't measure, as we really don't know their activities at the manufacturing site. Typically, though, all the income-producing capital equipment exemptions exist for retail, also exist for use tax. So you mentioned jewelry. Again, it's what this really is about is protecting our local businesses. Car dealers here in town got to compete against those who can look at a county or perhaps another city has a lower tax rate. So when the buyer brings that car home and they're telling everybody how they bought it over here and only paid 2% tax, that gets around and hurts our industry. So all we're doing here with the use tax primarily is helping some of our big ticket retailers. It helps them in that they can know that somewhere down the line, if somebody buys a car somewhere else or out of state, that eventually they'll pay at least the same sales tax. When it comes down to making a deal, and often $150, $200 will make a big difference in the car sale. If you can sit down with somebody and say, hey, look, man, they got a use tax here. You're not going to get away with buying it out of state. You're going to get tagged, the state tax already. Okay, so the state side and stuff. And what this is about is that many of the communities in the state do that, particularly the larger communities, to basically balance out their finances, their tax income. So it's something that you got to, there's options for us to select. So there may be some real use in presenting some additional details on those, what they could offer if we have some particular interests. But usually we match those up to our retail as well, so one and the other. But the use tax is a good tax in that people that are shopping on the internet will be remitting tax now. They won't be going head to head with their local retailers. That's primarily why I like it. And that's a huge part of our business community out there is the retail business being done on the internet. So this gives that platform some ability to collect tax. Amazon's collecting taxes now, and others are, as a result of the pressure that the cities are putting on now to kind of get. The problem was years ago there was a court case about catalog sales where guys would come around and sell and then ship and deliver from out of state. And there was a huge Supreme Court decision that basically prevented cities and states from taxing out-of-state sales, as they call them. But in fact, the pressure now is with the internet that. And they were saying the burden of administrating all these taxes and different rates, and believe me, that's a significant burden. It's now simplified by the internet and their ability to design tax matrices, computer programs and such that are out there. So the technology is giving us the ability. And there's apparently a big Supreme Court about the decision, case about to go here that's going to be on privilege taxes. And I think the fight is on. I was just at a seminar last week that the cities and states, including Arizona, really pressuring Congress to come up with some solution to this because we're losing a lot of money. It's a big issue when governments are having to fight each other every day now to keep up with expenses.
And are you able to boil that down into something that I can take back to different members of the community about?
I do have some flyers I'd be glad to shoot to Rudy that how to use information flyers that the state uses and cities. It's a lot more simple than it sounds, frankly. And what basically they do in accounting is that now if they're doing the accounting, their payables are going through there making sure they're paying. If you're reporting use tax to the state, making sure they're paying at least the use tax to the state at this point. so that if they get audited, and that's really the big tool, if you get audited, you could get really hammered with use tax. So for the state right now, you go through your payables and you bought something from out of state, you didn't pay any kind of tax at all, you permit some kind of use tax, or buy it down the street within the city.
So do the flyers explain how the numbers are calculated?
What was that again?
You just said you had some flyers that explain, I'm trying to get more information about how that 75,000 was calculated.
Again, we just took the population
Okay.
of similar cities in the area and matched it up, just drew that out there. It could be low, it could be much higher.
And earlier you commented about manufacturing, and that wasn't built in to our equation. Is that correct?
Well, typically there's a lot of exemptions offered to manufacturers. However, the supplies they might utilize in their processes could be subject to use tax. Generally, they're not, if they're consumed as part of the process, but if they're, auxiliary types of things that could be subject to tax. And I've seen it with some storage is also a part of this. Use tax is also included in the storage of items. You don't have to necessarily buy them, but you're storing something. I remember an example years ago of telephone poles being stored somewhere in a property, and another thing was shopping cards, something, but there's thousands of these things. They actually drive an income from storing them, but because there was no use tax, they couldn't get any revenue off of it. So it kind of covers a lot of things that the privilege sales tax, as we know it, doesn't. Many of us think of retail, that our privilege tax covers a lot of different types of businesses. The use tax really kind of hammers in on the retail side of things, kind of complements the retail tax.
Then lastly, at a prior meeting, we discussed the cost of collection, and that's tied to the, the amount that we think we're going to get. And we were told that you will be collecting the tax yourself, and the cost to the city will be your hourly rate. Are you able to provide any additional information as to the additional expense to the city?
Well, as part of any audit, you do additional use tax. What I've done, is gone through the payables and look at receipts, invoices. It usually doesn't take too long, but if it's a big manufacturer type of business, you could take 4 or 5 days to go through all the 4 years worth of records. But typically, what we're really hoping is that this is something that's self-reported, and the best way for us to accomplish that is to gather a lot of information through our business license process, information letters, and just get, hey, we're out there. If folks know that it's something they're responsible for, and it could end up being a big hit someday, if they were audited by the state or the city, they will tend to at least try to become aware of it and try to, either buy locally, which is what we're hoping, or start remitting use tax. In terms of auditing, it's really hopeful that we get the information out. That's a big part of what we're trying to do. So let's get the information out. Maybe even have some seminar classes. That's something that we can get the state under to kind of educate. This is what this tax is really about.
And I would appreciate that. I think the main gist of the questions I received was just looking for more information. So I think you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, my head's been spinning looking at it, but in fact, it's basically like our retail tax in reverse. It just is a complement to it. And you have a great retail base in the city.
Thank you.
Might I also ask that, they come to council with all these questions, and frankly, my email address is out there, my phone number is out there. Many times it's easier for you to just refer them to me, and I will hook them up with, either I'll give them an answer, I'll hook them up with Don or whomever we need to go ahead and get the answers for them. A lot of times things will get lost in a conversation between here and the constituent. So if at all possible, refer them over to us, and that keeps a lot of this misinformation. Not that you would give them misinformation, but I guarantee you between this conversation we're having here and tomorrow morning, there'll be plenty of misinformation out there. So what I'm saying is I encourage you as council members and the public also, my email address is up on the website. My phone is always available, and my cell phone is up there too, if I'm not mistaken. Give me a call, shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to try to, if I can't answer it, I'll find someone who can answer your questions.
Councilmember Allen. Oh, go ahead. Sure. Councilmember Henry, did you have more?
Go ahead, you sure? I just have a quick question. You alluded to it. I was wondering how the educational process would take place. You were saying you're going to send things out with the business license renewals?
Well, it's a little late for that at 8.
Well, some of the business licenses, the renewals have already gone out. Okay, this is why we were trying to get ahead of it when we had the last meeting, that we were sent back to go ahead and start working on it. We can't send anything out until such time as it has been approved. Right. So we can't send anything out there because until such time as it is approved, then we can go ahead and start putting stuff. Now we can send you information on what it might look like, especially from other communities that already have this established, and their flag staff has it established, and this is a mirror image of what we're doing too. So we can send you the information such as that, but we can't educate the public on something that we can't. That's why I'm saying, if anyone's got questions, give me a call, because we're not going to send out flyers on something that may or may not happen. After it happens, we will be happy to send out as much stuff as we can.
Okay.
Also, the web gives us a great opportunity. Our web page is a great place to put a lot of financial information. There's lots of opportunity for us. We can get that.
Mr. Zelchowski, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the mic, please. Thanks. Sorry.
Sorry about that. So yes, that would be, really a great way to save money too. It gets expensive sending out flyers, et cetera. But if we get it together and we do it with the business license verification or process, very good. Then they have a hard copy of it. Not everybody likes computers. So.
No, thank you.
Might I add something, Mayor and Council? Right after this we're required to put this on our social media, which we already have. The notice of intent has gone out on our social media. And we've already had someone trying to tag on their interpretation of what a use tax is on there. And they took one out of Colorado. I'm going to tell you, different states manage use tax, and some don't even have what they call a use tax. Use tax is because of a transaction privilege tax. Other states don't have transaction privilege. They have a true sales tax. So you can't compare apples to oranges. So if you see anything out there from some other state, probably it's not going to work here in Arizona. The Model City Tax Code is available on the Arizona Department of Revenue's website, and it can be pulled from there. As a matter of fact, I've already pulled some of it to try to put part of this information package together when and if the time comes.
Okay. So just for further clarification, this is, if you go to purchase a new vehicle in Cottonwood, you're going to pay the 3% sales tax. This 3% use tax isn't applied on top of that.
No. This only has. This is where misinformation goes.
Don't panic. I'm just asking questions that I get asked.
I'm not panicking. I'm going to just explain it. The 3% sales tax, that's it. That's all you pay. This is not a tax on top of a tax. And mind you, the reason I have to kind of smile about it is because this isn't the first time I've had someone ask me the same question, because they believe all of a sudden our sales tax is going to go, or our transaction privilege tax is going to go to 6%. It's not.
Right.
All it's doing is collecting the lost sales tax, lost privilege TPT tax, when something is bought outside of Cottonwood and less is paid than the 3%. So we're not adding another tax on top of that. We're just collecting lost revenue from sales outside the corporate limits.
Got it. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Any members of the public care to address council? Okay. Do I hear a motion? Nobody's anxious to make a motion for a new use tax?
I'm already getting beaten up. I'll go ahead and do it. What are they going to do? Draw blood? I move to approve the issuance of a notice of intent to adopt an ordinance to unselect model option number 15 of the Model City Tax Code, which will add Article 6, Section 600 through 660 of the Model City Tax Code to the City Tax Code, which would have the effect of adding a use tax to the city's tax code.
Go ahead. I'll second it.
Okay, so Councilmember Allen made the motion. Councilmember Althouse seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed?
No.
Okay. Very good. The motion's approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, moving on to resolution number 2918, designating an area in Old Town and along a portion of Main Street in Cottonwood as an arts Culture and Entertainment District pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes, Sections 4-207.c.4 and 4-207.d.2. Good evening, Mr. Rooney.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, for having me. City Council, glad to be here. I would, if it's okay, I'd like to invite Mr. Green to come up. He filled out a form, and I'd also like to invite Mr. Scully, just to back me up. Okay. What I am suggesting today is a adoption of Resolution 2918, which you should have in front of you, establishing the Arts, Culture, and Entertainment District in Old Town Cottonwood. I'll give you a little bit of background, and I'll show you some drawings. This is the third time that I've come in front of you talking about the Arts, Culture, and Entertainment District. First time was just a brief overview. Second time was the same presentation I have up here. And then, Mayor, you asked, and the City Council asked, that I have some community involvement. So we had a meeting, and we invited people from the area to come and talk about it. We did it at the rec center. We didn't have a huge crowd, but we got some good input, and Mr. Green here also was there, and he provided some input. In 2010, the legislature established a procedure to designate an entertainment district by resolution so as to provide an option for a city council to waive on a case-by-case basis the requirement that certain types of alcohol selling serving establishments be separated by at least 300 feet from schools and churches. In recent years, a number of other cities in Arizona have established such districts, including Prescott, Camp Verde, Gilbert, Clarkdale, Prescott Valley, Tucson, and other communities. At the Council's work session on March 14th, 2017, Economic Development Director Rooney presented a proposal for the adoption of an Arts, Culture, and Entertainment District in Old Town. And we're actually talking more than just Old Town. We're looking at all the way to 89A, and I've got maps that I'll show you. While no action was taken at the time, the council seemed to support the proposal and directed me to solicit additional input and feedback from stakeholders and the public prior to the council making a final decision, which I hope we can do tonight. An open house was held on Monday, September 25th, 2017, from 5 to 8 p.m. 8 people attended. All in attendance appeared to be in favor of the proposal. In addition, and you should have this in front of you as well, 13 support letters and 1 letter against the proposal were received and are attached to the council's review. I could have gotten a lot more support letters, but I thought I've got a pretty good representative sample of 13, and you've got them there. The Chamber of Commerce is in favor, the Old Town Association is in favor, Local First Arizona is in favor, and a lot of business people in the community. I think it's a great idea. So let me just take you right to the map. Oops, right to the map. That's the map. And I wish I had my pointer with me. Does this have a pointer on it? I don't even want to mess with it. So what we would do is start it. I want to show you this map over here. This might make it a little bit easier to see. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe we could turn on the light for a minute, Hess.
Might not be able to hear you. Might not be able to hear you. You want to bring the mic around a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe somebody could hold it.
I think that'll work.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, okay. So what we're looking at is, this is 89A right here, going towards Clarkdale and Jerome. We're looking at this area from here all the way to North Willard Avenue. And right now, the Old Town area is thriving, and we're doing pretty well down there. What we want to do is drive more development this direction. We want to take what we've done down, what the business people in our community have done. I'm not going to take credit for this, but what the business people have done, we want to take this and drive it this direction. And then we want to drive it this direction as well. So I can see in the future that we will have entertainment, hopefully theaters, art galleries, what we've done here going this direction. And I think it's very doable, and the entertainment district will help us make it happen. I would like, if you don't mind right now, to introduce Michael Green. Michael Green has an interest in Old Town. And Michael, if you just take a couple minutes to describe what your interest and why you think this might be a good idea.
Thanks. First of all, Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time. My name is Mike Green. I'm a commercial real estate broker out of Glendale, Arizona. I specialize in gas station properties and businesses throughout the state. I'm here tonight on behalf of my client in Cottonwood, Richard Backus, who Richard owns the Spirit gas station, if you know it, down at Main and 10th Street. Richard would like to sell that property. I have it listed with him. We're selling it as a redevelopment property simply because its current use is probably not economically viable in this area. If you look at the property or can visualize it, you'll know to the south of it, adjacent to it, is a church. Richard's property cannot be sold and used to dispense, sell, consume alcoholic beverages. That simply limits choices that developers and users have for that property. His property in an entertainment district would give a developer or user a choice in coming to the council for zoning, permitting, that sort of thing, to see if they could indeed put in an establishment that would serve or dispense alcohol. Consistent, I'm looking here at the logo, I'm not sure what it is behind you, but the heart of the wine country is kind of a tagline that the Chamber of Commerce uses. That's somewhat consistent with what we're talking about. It just gives more choices for the properties that would be in Old Town that might be impacted by either a church or a school within 300 feet of that property. It's not a blanket waiver on the council or the city's part that anybody that comes in can automatically get it. You can still decline specific applications on a case-by-case basis. Okay? So that's my interest in this. I've been working with Casey on this for, I don't know, what, half a year?
At least.
A while. Providing research. As I say, I deal with this gas stations and convenience stores throughout the state and spend a lot of time in relatively small towns on issues like this. And I have some involvement with it that was happy to share with Casey along the way. So, do you have any questions of me before I step out of the way?
Any questions for Mr. Green? No. Thank you for being here.
I'm disappointed. Everybody else got grilled.
We're not done with you yet, so.
Yeah, be careful.
One thing I've realized is that if somebody wanted to put a restaurant in that location where that gas station is, they could have a bar inside of that restaurant. They could do that today. If they wanted to put a hotel in there, they could put a bar in there. But if you wanted to put a wine bar in there, you couldn't do it. So we just want a little bit of flexibility. One of the support letters came from the Montessori school. There's a school, and they understand what we're trying to accomplish. They want economic development to go their direction. So, that's kind of my presentation. I don't know if you have any questions about it. Like I said, this is my third time making the presentation. I hope we can approve the resolution tonight. Thank you.
Are there any questions from council? Yes, please.
I have a comment on this one letter that we have in our packet from Bill Olson,
Yeah.
all the things that he's saying about leaving cigarette butts in the parking lot, empty beer cans, blah, 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 peeing in the corners. We had that at the chamber office, and there wasn't a bar next door. So if they're going to do it, they're going to do it. It doesn't, so I'm not opposed to it either, but those are valid concerns, but it just doesn't mean because there's a bar next door that it's going to happen.
I did have a pretty thorough conversation with him, and he doesn't think it's a great idea. But his thing, what he told me, he said, there's a bar right to the left, if you're looking straight at it, there's a bar right to the left of me. And he says, you know, they leave their cars in my parking lot, they throw up on my parking lot, he's found needles there. You could find that anywhere. And now on the other side is Butler Levitt Insurance, and they think it's a great idea. Stromboli was fine with the idea, but that A&B, is that what it's called?
Yeah, A&B Motors.
Yeah, he's not in favor of it. But the majority of people I talked to were in favor of it, but he was not, for sure.
And Mayor and Council, just so you know, the police department has made contact with the person who wrote that letter, because if those are real concerns, we need to deal with those, and so the neighborhood officers are working with them on that.
And that's a hard one. We had problems constantly up there at the chamber office.
Councilmember Allen?
I just wanted to give a comment as well. I think this is a marvelous idea. I think we're going in the right direction. We're actually moving some of that energy and some of that success that we're having in Old Town into the rest of the community, which is what we've been asked by many of our constituents to consider the rest of the community. And I think people get kind of hung up with the bar thing, with the wine thing. There's so much more than just that. When they say arts and entertainment, that's what it means. You're going to get more galleries. You're going to get more theaters out there. I mean, that's what we're interested in, bringing that along more than in just Old Town. And I think the citizenry will be pleasantly surprised.
Good.
I agree. I think council is trying to encourage economic growth and development and revitalization of all of Cottonwood, including the Midtown area, and that's really something that I hope this will accomplish.
And I think all of our legacy here in this room is to make our community better. We don't want to make it worse. So I think this is one of those things that's Old Town's going to spread, and we're going to make it bigger and better, and we don't want to ruin our quality of life. We want to make it better for everybody, particularly our citizens in our community. So thank you.
Thank you. It was a partnership in the beginning that really spurred the development in Old Town between the city and private businesses, you know. So I think this is just another step in the right direction, encouraging, you know, that partnership. And I think this is another tool that we'll have to market our community too. So it's certainly not just about consumption of alcohol, but about branding our community as an arts and culture and entertainment district. And we've got that. We can share it and show that we're business friendly and
thank you, Mayor.
Encourage that. Thank you.
Can I make a motion?
Sure.
I make a good one. Everybody will love me for this one.
Good Lord.
I got to offset it.
Somebody won't.
I move to approve Resolution 2918, establishing an arts, culture, and entertainment district in the area identified on Exhibit A to the resolution pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute 4-207.
Second.
Councilmember Allen made the motion, and Councilmember Norman seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, very good. The motion passes. Deputy Clerk, please read resolution number 2918.
Resolution number 2918, a resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, designating an area in Old Town Cottonwood and along portions of Main Street as an arts, culture, and entertainment district pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes sections 4-207.c.4 and 4-207.d.2. Mr. Mayor.
I'll take your word for it. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 3, ordinance number 631, amending section 301-F.4. It's spreading. Amendments or zone changes of the city's zoning ordinance. This is the first reading.
Charlie Scully with the Community Development Department. And I'm not sure if this next item is going to be nearly as exciting as an entertainment district, but it could be interesting. Somebody will find it interesting. The issue at hand has to do with the fact that there's a section of the zoning ordinance which is in conflict with the state statutes on the same matter. And that topic has to do with when you have a rezoning, you can set a time limit, a schedule for development for when it would be completed. And if it's not completed in that time frame, our zoning ordinance currently says that it essentially reverts back automatically without any further legislative action.
Mm-hmm.
The state statute on the same issue says you can put a time limit. It doesn't happen automatically. It would be something that would be up to each case-by-case basis. But if you get to the final point of the time limit and there hasn't been any permits and nobody's put a shovel in the ground, and this would be probably some reasonable time, years, on most development projects. You're going to give some number of years to get the financing in shape, and you're not, zoning is, you have to think of it like it's a permanent action. And in the case where you'd have a schedule for development that does not get done in the time frame, then you really have to go through an involved process, and it comes back to the city council for a legislative action, which would be an ordinance to change the act. You really have to give the owner every reasonable opportunity to extend the permit and follow up with it. You have to notify everybody. So it's the statute, the state statute says you really need to make it into bigger production than just automatically just somehow reverting back. And so the amendment is taken from the state statute pretty much directly, except we've added one additional step, which is to have a review by the Planning and Zoning Commission before it comes to council. Otherwise, the whole thing is just the wording, everything is just taking it right from the state statute. And that's pretty much it. That's
okay.
Pretty simple.
Sounds good, and you made it very exciting. So thanks for that presentation.
There are more technical issues. If we wanted to get into the weeds, we can talk about conditional zoning and you could have a long conversation on this issue if you wanted to streamline it and simplify it. We're just doing everything that the state statute says and adding the Planning and Zoning Commission into the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And as good as it gets.
No, that's good. I think it's good to fall in line with what the state requires, and I appreciate the extra step because that gives again the public one more opportunity to get involved.
So. I don't think this has ever come up as an issue in the past. There's sometimes 2 or 3 rezonings a year. Oftentimes in the past there was no time limit. But on some occasions, people don't follow through with the development, and you're stuck with a approved development project that the world has changed around it. Roads change and surrounding uses change, and you may want some option to revert back to its previous have to go back through the process again. But that, I think the case law on the matter really talks and leans into making sure people have a reasonable amount of time once you've given them a zoning to complete the project.
Right.
Because it's not something you're trying to push them along with year to year, but it's an extended kind of.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor and Council, just as the Council's heard, we have not, and we would not and could not do any reversionary zoning without having come back to Council. This is a conforming change, but even in the event of a conflict between the code and state law controls. So we're just we're updating the city code to reflect the statute.
All right. Any questions from council on this? Questions from public? Okay, and I will go ahead and move to approve ordinance. Oh, so sorry. Darn. Trying to rush through it. Okay, thank you.
We'll be back in a couple of weeks.
All right, I'll zip my lip and move on to resolution number, I guess I still have to have you read ordinance 631. Please, by title only.
Ordinance number 631, an ordinance of the mayor and city council of the city of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, amending sections 301 F4 amendments or zone changes of the city zoning ordinance. Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Resolution number 2919, declaring that certain document entitled Cottonwood Municipal Airport Aeronautical Commercial Minimum Operating Standards to be a public record. This item is followed up by ordinance number 625, adopting the proposed Cottonwood Municipal Airport Aeronautical Commercial Minimum Operating Standards, first reading. So what I'd like to ask council to do first off is just to, if we could just declare this a public document by approving resolution number 2919, and we'll get into the heart of the matter, which is discussing ordinance number 625.
Okay. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Do you want me to read it?
Sure.
I move to approve resolution number 2919, declaring the proposed new airport aeronautical commercial operating standards to be a public record.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Aldhouse made the motion and Pfeiffer seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Deputy Clerk, please read resolution number 2919.
Resolution number 2919, a resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, declaring that certain document entitled Cottonwood Municipal Airport Aeronautical Commercial Minimum Operating Standards to be a public record.
Thank you. Next up is ordinance number 625, adopting the proposed Cottonwood Municipal Airport Aeronautical Commercial Minimum Operating Standards, first reading. Good evening, Mr. Scott.
We really need to come up with an acronym.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, we
we'll
do.
work on that next. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Before I get into this really boring presentation about the history of the airport standards and what's inside of them, why are we here? Why does anybody care? Why do we want airport commercial standards? First, let me address this from our community's point of view. Why is this going to benefit us? As everybody knows, one of the biggest concerns with the airport is unfortunately liability. Somebody who's working up there, that brings a certain amount of liability and risk to the city. I've mentioned this to the commission before, and I believe to the council. If I want to rent a city Ramada for my daughter's birthday party, I need to supply the city with $1 million insurance policy. If I want to push someone out of an airplane over a skydiving operation over the city airport or fix their airplane, right now today, no insurance is required for such a thing. So this will kind of protect the city quite a bit for businesses that do business at the airport and the risk associated with those doing businesses. But I think the bigger reason is for economic generation. We're all excited for that airport to start generating some economic activity. This will even the playing field that will it will really entice larger companies to come in and make an upfront capital investment and make that airport more economically viable to increase business. Right now, there's no incentive for a larger company to come in and do that. In fact, as soon as we can get this worked out one way or another, what I'd like to do is get the what we're going to call the FBO RFQ. It's not really going to be an FBO, but it's going to be advertising space at the airport for someone to come in. It may be an FBO, but that's, I think, the biggest reason why we're here is we want that airport to be an economic generator, and I believe that's one of the council's strategic goals moving forward. So that's the bigger reason why we're here before you get into all the boring details. And that's a lot of what it talks about here is why. First of all, equality. So someone doing business, say, out of their truck, a mobile mechanic, technically possesses the same amount of, or supplies the same amount of risk to the city as someone who's an established mechanic doing business in a hangar, but right now they are not supplying the same amount of insurance. Second, and really this is our top priority, is economic generation. We really want to see some businesses get established up there and really start not only making the airport more self-sustaining, but that'll be a bigger impact on the rest of the community as well. We mentioned already risk protection. A bigger reason is if someone who wants to come to do business here, they want to come and they want to start doing business right away. They don't want to negotiate every aspect of their contract, every aspect of their lease, every aspect of their permit. They would like a standing document that they can come in and read, and it's all right there on what they need to do, what they need to supply. So this will really expedite the permitting process. And then finally, of course, the FAA strongly recommends we adopt commercial standards. And here's the reasons why the FAA, and this is straight out of FAA document 5190.6b, another long term. First, to promote safety. The bigger reason, and this was actually contested among the airport commission when it was going through, is to make sure that people who are coming to our airport are getting services that are licensed, They're approved from the FAA, and I think some of our local users were confused by that. They thought we as the city would be saying, okay, you are okay to be a flight instructor, you are okay to be a aircraft mechanic. That's not what we would be doing. We would in no way be licensing them. Licensing these companies. We would simply be asking them to provide proof of their license, proof that the FAA has licensed them. So that's all we're doing. We're not in any way licensing someone, saying someone is acceptable to be an airport mechanic. We're just checking for their licenses before they come and do business on city property. Also, to enhance the availability of adequate services, like we talked about already, that economic generation, to promote the orderly development of airport land. I think that's something we'd all like to see happen. Provide clear and objective distinction, and again, that's that faster permitting process. It's a clear and objective, when you come in and you do business, how are you going to do that business? And finally, to prevent disputes between aeronautical users and providers, and to reduce the potential complaints. So there has been a long process that started in July of 2016. We've done well over 40 public meetings. I do want to thank many members of our users, our airport users, our airport commission. They poured a lot of time and effort into this, and yes, there were disagreements, but normally this probably would have cost us somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 if we'd have had a consultant put the whole document together. We did pay a consultant to review it. I believe we paid him about $3,000 just to review it, but we saved the city a substantial amount of money. And I say we, I apologize. Our airport users, our volunteers who poured a lot of time and effort into this saved us a lot of money here. This is just a list of many of the public meetings we've had, not even the unofficial side committee meetings, just the advertised public meetings, all the way up to tonight, November 7th. The Airport Commission from the very beginning said they had some clear objectives. Those objectives were to make it as user-friendly as possible. So there were several things that we modified when we took this from other cities out there. Finally, they wanted to decrease the upfront capital investment. I'll talk in a minute about how we did that. We modified the document in a way that really makes it less expensive for someone to come here and start their business. And finally, they really want to minimize fees. And it wasn't even so much fees they wanted to minimize. They really want to minimize the annual reporting requirements. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Leasing space. This is how we decrease the amount of upfront capital that someone would need to come to do business here. What a lot of other cities and airports do is they say, if you're going to do business on our field, you have to have an office here, you have to have a phone line, you have to have, they'll even get into X square feet. They'll define how big your office is, how big your hangar is. And I think the reason they do that is they really want to see someone else come and make a large capital improvement into their airport for economic generation and obvious reasons. I don't think we're large enough to require that. I think if we want a business to come in here, I don't think we can require, say, hey, come in here and make a $200,000 investment into a hangar. So we took that requirement out, the requirement to the requirement to lease space from the airport. So there will be mobile mechanics. There will be people who can come in and lease existing facilities. They don't necessarily need to build their own. And that was a big part of the Airport Commission requested that, and I think that's a good move for an airport our size. We'd already talked about that, the pros and the cons. Obviously, it's easier for them to come in and do business. It's less likely for a large business to come in and make capital investments. They still have to compete with the mobile mechanics. So there's pros and cons that go along with it, but I think in general, this is a good thing for an airport our size. Insurance. Insurance was probably one of the more highly contested points throughout the entire process because it is expensive. I'm not going to lie, a lot of this could cost someone up front $5,000, $10,000. Some of these policies may cost them up to $20,000, maybe even $25,000 just to get started. For instance, a $5 million policy could very likely cost that much. Obviously, that depends a lot on their activity, their business history, and those sorts of things. But this is the final insurance table that we did end up with. I do want to point something out to the council. These two numbers here in yellow, I should point at this one, here in yellow below, they were incorrect. In fact, here they're incorrect in your document. In the final document, they have been corrected. Basically, it was just a typo. These two columns are switched. If you're going to store fuel at the airport, you need to give us environmental impairment liability. So for a $1 million and $2 million. So I just want to make it clear. We did find a typo right before the final version was printed. That was it right there. Timeline, the Airport Commission unanimously approved a document that's been modified, and I'll get into that in a minute, on April 19th. That was brought to the City Council in a work session. The City Council directed staff to go look at the fees, because at the time there was no fees, there was no revenue-based fees, and I'll get into details on those fees here in a minute, but right now I'm just going through the timeline. We went out and we looked at what other airports were doing as far as fees. We brought it back to the City Council on September 28th, and you directed us to proceed, but you asked us to bring it to the Airport Commission to inform them. We did bring it to the Airport Commission last Wednesday, November 1st. They are still not a big fan of the revenue fees. That's still something they're concerned about. They have approved the rest of the document, but are not a fan of the fees. And of course, we're here tonight. Now, let's talk about the fees real quick. So this top section you see here, I apologize, most of you can see this one, so I'll try to point over here. This is a business currently located at the Sedona Airport who's looking at moving to the Cottonwood Airport, or has looked at moving to the Cottonwood Airport. In the past, in fact, last year, they paid to the Sedona Airport, based on a whole list of different fees, about $178,000 to that airport. Under the draft that the Airport Commission recommended, they would have paid, had they moved their business to the Cottonwood Airport, used the lease they actually currently have, they would have paid to the City of Cottonwood $3,000. Now that assumes the same level of business volume. I'll be the first to tell you we're not Sedona, so it probably wouldn't be the same level of business volume, I'll admit that. But again, just trying to compare apples to apples. Assuming the same level of business volume, the same fuel flowing, they would have paid to the City of Cottonwood under the new revised standards about $69,000. So I think one of the things the Airport Commission kept asking us is, why do we need these fees? Do we need these fees? Do we need these fees? No. However, if we want the airport to be an economic generator, if we want to continue to make investments in the airport, if we want to get an FBO or someone else to come in to, that's going to cost the city money, we do need some sort of revenue generation. And this is a fairly fair, as you can see here, compared to surrounding airports. It's a fair standard. It also is probably the least impactful to our current users. Don't get me wrong, it will be impactful. As for instance, someone working on their aircraft, if they have to pay a 1.5% fee on that, that's probably going to be passed on to the users, so it will be impactful to them. However, because the businesses are paying for it, the majority of it, this will probably be the least impactful to our airport users compared to, say, increasing all of our tie-down fees, compared to, say, doing a landing fee, which Sedona does have a landing fee. We are not suggesting a landing fee at this time. We're just, that would require full-time people at the airport in order to man that, and we're not set up for that. So although this is not necessarily popular with our airport users, I think this is the most fair to the group. Let's go over Article 2 real quick, since it is the one that's most contentious, and Article 2 has to do with fees. This is the section that the Airport Commission adopted. Now, they did have lease-based fees. Basically, if you come in, you have a lease, you're going to pay based on that lease. They also had a consultant fee. Basically, if you come in and you propose to build a new hangar, a new extension to the taxiway, well, we may not have the expertise on staff to have that reviewed per FAA standards, so we may have to ship that to a third-party consultant. And the Airport Commission was okay with that business paying that third-party consultant as long as they were notified of a cost estimate ahead of time. That was their one, and that is in there. So this is Article 2 as it was approved by the Airport Commission. This is what has been added today, and again, this is what it went in front of the council September 28th. This section in green down here is what has been added. Basically, it's a revenue-based fee. It does require a business to supply at the end of every year, actually at April 15th of the following year, so they have quite a bit of time, to supply a report reporting on all of their business activity, and along with that, their revenue-based fees. That's basically what's being added here. And here's the table on the table 2.1 following in Article 2. Real quick, and I'll get into some surrounding airports here in a minute, but basically what we're requesting is a 1.5% of their gross revenue. Now, there's other airports that charge 2%, there's other airports that charge 2.5%, Sedona's at 2.5%, Glendale's at 2.5%. There's other airports that charge as high as 10%. We even found one that charges as high as 20%. By the way, we're not even considering those at this time because that's generally a non-aviation business. For instance, if, say, a restaurant came onto the airport, that's when they start charging, say, a 10% fee, a 20% fee. a rental car service. That's when they really start charging those higher fees. So we're not getting anywhere near that at this time. And 1.5%, again, keeps us pretty competitive with some surrounding airports. Again, looking at some surrounding airports, this is from a Prescott study done in 2008, so again, a little bit older data, but what they found based on percentage of gross revenues compared to other airports, this is a range for comparable airports. Basically what Prescott did, and I'll show you the next slide, they found 10 airports that they considered somewhat comparable, and that's always debatable what's comparable, so you do a few smaller, a few bigger, and they said the range they found was anywhere from 2.5% to 10% of gross revenue. Now Prescott charges 1.5% to 20% of gross revenue. And again, that's 2008. Here's their another table showing several different airports. Prescott, Cottonwood, they consider Daytona Beach just because that's basically Embry-Riddle has two campuses, Daytona Beach and Prescott, so that's the only reason they mentioned Daytona Beach. Otherwise, it's not even close to being a comparison. As you can see here, they're anywhere from 1.5% to 20%. Cottonwood, of course, at that time was nothing. Daytona Beach does not charge a percentage of gross revenue. Glendale, this is actually an old figure, 2008. They did not have a fee. They now charge 2.5%. Lake Havasu charges 10% across the board. So you can see, and some airports do not charge a fee and others do. This is a breakout from Glendale. And again, they charge a 2.5% fee. I apologize, I ran through that really quickly because I know all of you have seen that before. I know some members of the public have not. I do want to open up for any questions.
Any questions for staff on this? When you said that the airport commission was not in favor, did they take a vote on that? Or did they?
They didn't. I apologize.
Go ahead.
No, they didn't vote. It wasn't really an action item because we were brought to them to review. So they were happy to see it, but they did not vote on it.
Okay, but it was pretty much consensus that they were not in agreement with the fees.
There were only 3 there of the 5 last week, and of those 3, yeah, they were not. And I guess I hesitate to speak for the other 2, but the other 2 seemed opposed to the fees earlier on also. So
I just feel like this document's gone back and forth, and I feel like we've struck a really good balance, with what we're proposing to charge up there based on what other airports charge, and I think it's, I know the Airport Commission worked on this for just so long, and I think it's a good document. I think it will entice businesses to locate, but I think more importantly, I think it also helps to protect some of the existing businesses that are up there, by keeping the playing field level, as we say, and I think it's just a nice professional document that if I were looking to relocate a business, and I looked at this document, I would say I'm going to highly consider Cottonwood. So good job. And thanks to the Airport Commission. I know that, and I know where they're coming from on the, they don't want to squeeze out the little guys up there, and I appreciate that very much. But at the end of the day, we've got to strike a balance, and I think this document does that.
I agree.
Okay, so this is first reading. If there's no other questions, I know we've gone over this, quite a bit. And we're not done yet. But yeah, there's no action taken. It's first reading. So, Deputy Clerk, please read ordinance number 625.
Ordinance number 625, an ordinance of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Arizona, adopting the Cottonwood Municipal Airport Aeronautical Commercial Minimum Operating Standards by reference. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so next up, item 6, proposed real estate exchange with the Garrison Revocable Trust for continuation of a trail system. Very delighted to see this on the agenda.
Yes. Yeah, this is actually getting exciting. Finally an exciting topic. A little bit less controversial, which is good. You're all aware we completed an airport master plan. I'm sorry. Let's get off the airport method. I'm sorry. We completed a trails master plan, and I say we. I actually had nothing to do with it. That was our recreation department. We just get to help them activate it. So Hez is here today. I'm going to ask him to come up here in a minute to talk about the trail system, the benefit to the public, the open space, and the benefits to that. And I'll get up and talk about the much more boring items as far as the contract and the agreement itself. So many of you are aware, we are excited about a possible trail, and we're calling it the Mingus Mountain Cottonwood Sedona Trail. Basically, the idea being you could hike from the top of Mingus Mountain to Sedona, go right through Old Town Cottonwood, through Riverfront Park, through Dead Horse Park, and that would be not only a major benefit to a lot of our locals, but a significant tourist boom also. Many years ago, I think about 5 or 6 years ago, Mr. Grosetta dedicated a portion of this trail to the city. At the time, we could not get another large property owner to come to the table. We reached out to them recently. Basically, it's the Garrison Revocable Trust. Our contact with them has been Curtis Linder. And we reached out to Curtis. We said, Curtis, would you open to the idea of dedicating a trails easement so we could go in and construct this trail and get it going? And he had a few reservations we were trying to work through. Finally, he came up with an idea. He said, would we take the property entirely? And of course, we can't speak for the council, but we said we can talk about it and bring it to the council. And he said he was interested in a possible trade, and the trade sounded like a pretty good deal for the city. So we put together an agreement. We haven't completed any surveys yet, because I'll get into that in a minute. That's going to have some costs associated with it. So I apologize for the quality of my sketches. The good news is you can tell we haven't spent any money on them. So, but that's what we're here to talk about today. This is right out of the Trails Master Plan. This is the old, I need to stop pointing at that one. I'm sorry, nobody can see that one.
Linda and I like it when you do it over there.
I'll go back and forth. This is the Old Town area. You've got Verde Heights right here, obviously the hospital. This is Blowout Creek or Del Monte Wash, and this is the trail. Andy Grosetta dedicated this portion a few years ago. There are a few other private property owners in this area right here. They have all verbally committed. They haven't signed a document, but they verbally committed to giving us the easements. From this point to this point, it's all city owned, so that could be constructed all on city property. That's both airport property and wastewater property. As many of you know, the Mesquite Hills subdivision is going to develop one of these phases. There's actually, I think it'll be 3 branches through here in the future. None of them exist today. But this is the trail, it's a portion right here. The portion we're talking about today is basically from up right near 89A all the way down into Old Town. And it's that large wash between Verde Heights and Mingus Avenue, the Knackard property, as many of you know. Went over all that already, I apologize. So before we get into the trade and in the details of it, I want to invite up Hez to talk about the benefits of the land swap, the benefits to the community, and to take any questions on that before you get into the details too much. So Hez, would you like to take that?
Thanks, Morgan. Mr. Mayor, Council, Hezekiah with the Parks Recreation Department. It's a pleasure. This is a great opportunity and one that ourselves, Planning and Zoning, Charlie Scully, Morgan, and myself have been working on for a while. Charlie Scully a lot in the past. Our approach from our department standpoint and our responsibility is sustainability, conservation, preservation of open space. We have a very vital asset, and it's our topography. It's where we live, and it's why we kind of chose this area. But because of that, we have to make sure that we preserve that for the future and future generations. We have to have smart growth with the development happening in Grosetta's area of 550 homes. Potentially, if you do a spatial analysis, currently the standard is 9.45 acres per 1,000 citizens. That's a National Parks Recreation standard. Right now, we have about 113.9 acres of parkland. If we added those citizens, we put three people in each house. That's 1,650, and we would need an additional 15.7 acres of parkland. That's one side of things. On the other side of that is that we have an asset, which is our natural resource, which is our topography, our landscape. In the Chamber's analysis of what drives tourism to this area, self-paced recreation is a large part of that. Trails, open space, getting out. And we have to make sure to protect that going into the future. There's also an economic development aspect to this. We've been trying to work on developing that Knackard property along that section across from the Maverick. If we're able to define a nice park area in there, that would help that development side of things. Ideally, the Parks Recreation Department needs a comprehensive Parks and Recreation open space plan that would include a natural resource plan and then also community planning. It's a systematic approach that takes into all assets and understands and really puts something solid down on paper. One of the other aspects to our approach from this is that obviously we have a homeless issue down in that area. There's a theory called crime prevention through environmental design. And basically what that means, if we create a space where there's a flow of people, that will naturally decrease on its own. By doing that, we would have the trail system, connect everything. And lastly, our approach up front is developing multimodal transportation, increasing that, and increasing connectivity, and then tourism. National Parks Recreation Department defines this area as an undeveloped natural area, UNA. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Allen? Okay.
We'll go too far ahead, real quick, let me skip ahead a little bit just to show you the property we're looking at. So again, this is VIII Heights Drive, this is 89A, the roundabout at VIII Heights and Black Hills. This is Mingus Avenue, so Maverick would be located about right here, the Clemenceau Museum, and of course Old Town right here. So the property that he's talking about dedicating to the city is this property outlined in red. It's also a portion of this strange shaped parcel up here. As you can see, the majority of this parcel is in the floodplain, and what's not in the floodplain tends to be very steep side slopes. Now, Mr. Lindner, during the discussion, he mentioned that one of his final reservations, and it sounds like, of course, this is a family trust, so it's not just a single individual's decision. One of the final reservations was they felt that portions of the property were actually possible for development, and it's not our position to agree or disagree with him, but they asked if they could retain portions of the parcel. And I'll get into those portions here in a minute, but basically it's this area right here, which you can see is up out of the floodplain, an area right here, which you can see is up out of the floodplain, and this portion right here, even though it's in the floodplain, it is very flat, and they believe possibility for developed. The good news is none of those areas would impact the trail, so we still get our trail, get the majority of the park and open space, even if it did get developed someday. So, but I just wanted everybody to be aware of the property we're talking about. Now I'll skip back just a little bit. So what does Mr. Lindner want to trade for? We're jumping back down into Old Town right here. This is Main Street, this is Cactus, this is Bocce's. The Hippie Emporium would be right here. This area outlined in blue right here is actually city-owned right-of-way. Why we own that portion, it has to do with a plat from 1917, and it's just always been that way. Mr. Lindner owns a very narrow, I believe it's only 25 feet wide piece of property right here, 25 by maybe 100. And as you can tell, that property's pretty tough to develop. So he believes it's much more developable if he owned this area around it. So he said, would the city be interested in trading this land right here for his land, the Wash property? Also, by the way, on a side note, many of you remember this from a few years ago. Interesting enough, the city does not own Cactus Street. Mr. Lindner actually owns this small portion of Cactus Street. So we'd like to get that straightened out, and basically that would come back to the city as part of this trade also. So again, just to recap, this area outlined in blue would be going from the city to Mr. Lindner. This would stay, and I say Mr. Lindner, I mean the trust. This would stay with Mr. Lindner. This would be coming from the trust back to the city. This area here in Hatched, that would basically be their property, but we'd have a 10-foot wide sidewalk and public utility easement, basically because our right-of-ways tend to be 50 feet wide. This would only be 40 feet, so that the PUE gives them a little bit more developable area, but also gives us plenty of room should we ever develop the street in the future. So that's what would be going to Mr. Lindner. The next slide I'll get into what would be coming to the city. And I do apologize, this is one of our high dollar sketches. This is Old Town right here, Willard Street, VIII Heights, 89A, and Mingus Avenue down here. The area outlined, it actually came out in purple in the scan, it was pink in the sketch. This is what would be coming to the city. This area here is kind of in question, that's something that would have to be straightened out with the survey. But basically everything in here would be coming to the city. The areas drawn in yellow are the areas Mr. Lindner would like to retain, that he would like to remain his property. This blue line through here is the proposed linear trail. We'd also like to see a trail someday connecting the VIII Heights neighborhood to Mingus Avenue. That actually has a lot of local benefit that allows everyone to walk to the post office, the hospital, potentially schools. We learned this a couple of years ago in our Safe Routes to School study. Normally, the school district does not bus within a 2-mile radius of the school. Basically, they say you're close enough, you can walk. They make the exception for Verde Heights because of that wash. Basically, if we could someday construct a safe, we'd have to make sure we've got the transients out and several other areas cleaned up. But if we can construct a very safe walkway, that could really increase the walkability of our community. So, and I do apologize, I should have started out this way. I know Charlie Scully's already left for the night, but this is one of his legacy projects. He's been working on this for a long time. In fact, this line you see here was literally Charlie walking with a GPS unit, mapping out the trail. And as Doug knows, this is not an easy area to walk. I almost lost Doug in there a few weeks ago. So, sorry about that, Doug. But Charlie's dedicated a lot of time to this, and he's done an excellent job. All of these areas, he's actually hand mapped by walking and saying this is a very reasonable place to put a trail in the future. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else on this map that's relevant. So basically, yes, everything outlined in pink or purple on this map would be coming to the city. This would stay, this would stay. We would require a 6-foot wide trail easement just so we could walk up to Mingus Avenue. But questions on that real quick before I move on? Questions? Okay. All right, pros and cons. Hez already went into the major pros of having that open space and reserved as open space almost in perpetuity if the council would like. It's obviously a lot easier to police illegal activity if it's city-owned property. Fire protection, that is a major concern of several people who own properties along that wash. Is if the fire went through there, it would be very, very difficult to protect the residents along Verde Heights Drive. If that property was to develop, if it was to remain private, it would present some major floodplain issues. Yes, we would ask them to do floodplain studies, but development within the floodplain is always difficult. Yes, as always, bringing on more city property is more of a liability, more of a maintenance to the city, so I don't want to pretend like this is all win. You know, that does come with an associated cost. More recreational space, which has already hit on. Real quick, there are costs associated with this. This piece of property is so old, it does not actually have a legal description, so we'd have to have that put together. That normally has a fee that goes along with the survey, but I'll get into another issue in a minute, why that survey could cost us $20,000. The title reports themselves could cost us another $2,000, so we are looking at about $22,000. So it's kind of sad when you're getting something for nearly free and it's costing us $22,000. And I'll get into this more in a minute, but I do believe that's a very good deal for the city to consider if we want that as open space. Okay, the bigger issue right now, encroachments. So there's several properties along Verde Heights Drive that have over the years basically encroached upon this, what is today private property, what would become the city's property should we trade for it. This is an aerial image off of Google Earth, and you can basically see, you know, some sheds basically out on private property. Obviously, that could get to be a little political if the city now owns it and we've got encroachments on city property. Here's one thing the council might consider doing. If you wanted to move forward with this land trade and if this did become city property, here's something you could consider doing. That survey, that $20,000 survey, by the way, it could be as cheap as $15,000, but I want to be conservative, letting you know it could be as expensive as $22,000. One of the things that survey would do is identify all of these encroachments. So what you as a council could consider doing is basically after that survey is complete, issuing a letter to each of those property owners saying, hey, we recognize you are encroaching on this property. However, we've documented where that encroachment limits are today. Don't encroach any further. Basically saying, okay, this is it, stay, and kind of establishing a new property line, if you will. Obviously, there's other remedies the council could consider. That's just one I wanted to bring up because it might be the most palatable because people have been there for a while. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Or, I'm sorry, not necessarily the easiest, but the best for all parties. So that's something we might consider if you'd like us to look into that further. That's actually all I have as far as the agreement goes. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Scott, council? I'm, again, just really tickled to see this come before us because I know this has been in the works for an awfully long time, and this does create that connection from Mingus Mountain to the river that we need, that our community needs, and I think, I don't think we've yet even touched the tip of the iceberg on the recreational opportunities that this whole Verde Valley has, and there's a whole new economy coming here, whether we like it or not, and this is a real critical piece to that economy. So I really appreciate you working so hard with Mr. Lindner on making this happen. I think it's an excellent thing. I just wanted to point out a couple of things that came up like 3 or 4 times during the presentations. This isn't meant to be a critique on city staff, but we talked about crime and safety for children and stuff like that, that this would reduce the homeless activity in the area. We all know there are homeless folk living in the area there, but it won't reduce homelessness. It will remove them from the area, but they'll still be somewhere, so it's not, it will push the folks that are living there currently to another area. It's not going to in any way solve their problems. And it's still not illegal to be homeless either, so I don't want to call it criminal activity. I understand that, they're camping there on private property, but it's still not illegal to be homeless. And I don't know that there's been any criminal activity. I don't think anybody has been assaulted by a homeless person or anything in Cottonwood, so I don't know. I know there's the appearance of some folks feel unsafe, and I understand that, but I don't think there's any documented that I know of where somebody has been attacked by a homeless person in the communities. Anyway, just wanted to say those things. But that being said, I'm excited for this to go through. How would council feel about in those areas where the homeowners have encroached? Which is funny that we'd be giving them concessions.
Exactly.
When they've encroached, we're going to kick the homeless people out. But if you've moved on to private property, we'll go ahead and let you get away with that. How about charging for the encroachments to pay for the survey?
I might lean on our legal counsel for that. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. No one can encroach on public property. There's no such thing as squatter rights for that. But technically, it's private property today they're encroaching on, and they may have.
And we'd have to evaluate the encroachments on a case-by-case basis. There are potentially a host, maybe a hornet's nest of legal issues that we'd have to untangle, depending upon how long, what were the circumstances of the encroachment, who owned it at the time, what notice did they have.
Got it.
A lot of questions before we have too many answers.
So it'd eat up probably more time and money than it'd be worth.
I think you have to wait for the tonight is just about the swapping of the land. I think you have to wait on the survey and see. I mean, it's hard to tell from a picture.
Yeah.
We need more information.
Okay.
We'd certainly, if this moves forward, we'll put that under the light and look at Morgan mentioned there's a bunch of different remedies, and I think as we understand the facts of the encroachments more, or at least I do, Morgan may already, we can give you a better handle on the options.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Well, regardless, I think just the cost for surveying alone, we're going to look back in 10, 20 years and say, wow, that was a heck of a bargain.
Money well spent.
Yeah.
Speaking of that cost, may I bring up one item I should have brought up earlier, and I do apologize. Councilmember Althouse brought this up earlier tonight. We don't like bringing up non-budgeted items to you. That was not the intent. This is, of course, not a budgeted item because we weren't planning this land trade. It was brought to us by Mr. Lindner. So we have been looking into this. Like, this $22,000 is not budgeted. We do have about $18,000 budgeted for a trail from Old Town. We called it the 5th Street Trail connecting Old Town to Riverfront. That's about $18,000. We're going to have that very professionally done and kind of a professional track and everything else. A couple things. One, the IGA with the state is taking quite a while to do that. We've got to go get more easements for that from private property owners who are all participating excellently, by the way. So one thing the council might consider is, because this $22,000 is an unbudgeted item, should we take that $18,000, which could really be spent any year? We could rebudget that for next year, or we could go after grants in the future. We'd really like to go after getting a lot of these constructed with volunteers. There's a lot of people who are willing to volunteer to construct trails, and once we kind of have a base, then we go after grants for maybe the more expensive improvements, such as handrails, signage, more professional surfaces, those kind of things. So I did want to bring that up, that this $22,000 is not budgeted. That may be a good source to grab just from a more timely point of view. This deal may not come around a lot, and we can improve that other trail in future years.
Okay. Makes good sense.
question. You're talking about where we're waiting for somebody else to put something together for us, and that's not likely going to happen very quickly. So even if we were to move it off until next year, then we can turn around and work on budgeting it next year.
That's correct.
Mayor, council, just traditionally our experience in working with state parks and the IGAs, they tend to take a long time. And I think this probably is a good use of that money in terms of being able to move forward as quickly as possible on this. And then also in relation to the Fifth Street Trail, we are looking at pursuing a couple of state park grants this year that could easily be included in, because it's so closely tied to that trails plan that we put together for Riverfront Park. So it probably is, again, my recommendation would go ahead and let's use that 18,000 from that other trail.
Okay. Good. And then as far as actually making improvements in there, there's no plan for that at this point, right?
There's no plan for that. There's no money for that. If this trade went through, what I'd like to do is sit down with Parks and Rec and city staff and see what we can do with either internal staff or volunteers to go, at minimum, at least get some weeds cut, and maybe in the future move into actually cutting in a trail in places.
Great.
And you can trust me, there's definitely some weeds that need to be cut in there.
Mr. Mayor, Council, as Morgan highlighted on, we have a Parks Commission that during our 5-year planning session that took place, they highlighted trails as kind of one of their top priorities. And so we have a new member on there who's very active and excited and wants to put together a trails maintenance group, because that's another thing. Once this all gets built, how are we going to maintain this system?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we put together a good solid core of volunteers like they have in other areas, that will help that sustainability side of things. In addition to that, we've got Trevor Gottschalk and some other folks that have been real passionate about trails, and we get these folks together on a trails committee that I think help us out with a nice planning body.
Great, thank you. All right, Council. I'll go ahead and move to approve the proposed land trade with the Garrison Revocable Trust.
Second.
Okay, so Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Henry seconded it.
Finish it.
Did you want me to finish the motion so that we give you the, okay. So I'll go ahead and move to approve the proposed land trade with the Garrison Revocable Trust, subject to approval of the final form of agreement by the city attorney.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Henry seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion's approved. Thank you. Okay, last item is appointing a council representative to the Northern Arizona Council on Aging. This was brought to our attention by Councilmember Allen, I believe, and former Mayor Diane Jones served on this, and we're looking to seek another council member to serve on here.
I would really like to serve on that.
You would?
I would.
Okay, great.
If nobody else wants to.
Fine with that.
I'm having difficulty attending the water meetings that I'm a second for Karen, because I'm also part of the leadership group, and their issue days always fall on the same day.
Okay.
So maybe in the future we'll put it on the next meeting. We could see about getting another second for Karen and have me fall into this one, because I hate letting Karen down.
Okay.
And I'll move to appoint Councilmember Allen to the Northern Arizona Council on Aging as the council representative from the city of Cottonwood.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Henry made the motion and Piper seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you for serving. And are there any council members that would like to be a alternate?
When do they meet, Kyla?
Karen? Oh, for me? For me? Oh, I'm
So
sorry.
you're talking about
For this area agency, yeah. For the council, for the Northern Arizona Council on Aging, excuse me.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I think they meet like once a month, but I don't remember.
Once a month. It would be rare that I not attend, but it's once a month.
And it's usually
And it's in Flagstaff in the mornings.
mornings are tough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's okay.
Well,
Reach out if for some
yeah.
reason you can't go, and
I'll reach out.
Yeah, okay.
It just depends what day of the week and what time it is for me, if I can get away from work or not.
Just reach out. We'll figure it out, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks for your service on that. And next is claims and adjustments.
Move we pay the claims and adjustments.
Second.
Okay, Councilman Norman made the motion, Piper seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and adjournment.
We adjourn.
Me too. I'll second that.
Oh,
All in
I thought you
favor?
said you seconded it.
He said me too.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.